Hey everybody, it's Joric. Welcome back to my channel. If you're returning, I greatly appreciate your support. Thank you so much for keeping me going and keeping me motivated. If you're new, please consider subscribing. I talk about moving to and living in Portugal, as well as I like to talk about Europe and Europe travel news as we get it. Today I'm going to talk about taxes, but only in general terms. I'm not an accountant. I don't have a background. I'm not a CPA. You need to consult a CPA who can do U.S. taxes as well as foreign or Portuguese taxes to get the best advice. But I want to talk in general terms about what goes on with our tax situation, and I also want to explain a couple of subscribers who have given me and messaged me kind of their situations with taxes that might help you and might help when you're talking to your accountant on when you're moving here, what that's going to look like for you tax-wise. I want to say at the top, granted it's now 1 minute into the video, I have a new microphone and I just uploaded some different editing software. So I'm hoping that with a new microphone and a new editing software, you can hear me. And if anything, you have to turn me down as opposed to have to turn me up to listen. So I'm hoping from now on the videos, the audio quality is a little better. Let's get into taxes. If you look in the description box, I'm placing the U.S. Portugal Tax Treaty in there. It's a PDF document. It's from the IRS website, and it's something that you're going to want to review, as well as your accountant or accountants are going to want to look at to make sure they have an understanding of not only what you owe back home in the U.S., but what you owe here or when you're going to be moving here to Portugal. Along with that tax treaty, I'm also putting a link in the description box for the NHR. If you're watching this video and you're considering Portugal, you've probably already read up and know about this. This is a tax regime that Portugal introduced, I think 10, 12 years ago, where you are able to take advantage of some tax favors or tax status that is capping your taxable amount. If you're working, it's 20%. If you're retired, it's 10%. So if you're looking or when you're looking to pay your Portuguese taxes in the work situation, which is our situation, our ceiling is 20% of what we're going to owe here in Portugal. If we were retired, so we were on a D7 visa, it would be 10%. Now, I will say I think the NHR for freelance and digital nomads, it works very similarly. So if you're doing that type of work, truly remote work, I believe it's also capped at that 20%. So those two links are going to be in the description for you. I want to go through our tax situation. This may not apply to everybody, but I just want to tell you kind of what our experience is. Each year we've been to Portugal, we've filed 3 tax returns in Portugal and 3 tax returns in the U.S. We've had to file extensions every year in the U.S. because the Portugal returns are not ready by April 15th. We get that information on as far as what we owe or what we pay around the end of June. Even though we put the information in the Portuguese system, it's called a simulator that you can put in all the information and they can accept it. So many people do their own taxes here because it's quite simplified. So we have an idea up front, let's say in March or April, what we're going to owe or what we're going to get back. But because it's not official, we can't necessarily use that for our U.S. tax returns. So this year, I think it was June 29th or 30th, we got a notification from the Portuguese IRS going, okay, here's what you owe for the past tax year. So then once we had that number, we took a screenshot of that, sent that to our accountant in the U.S. because that would be used as a credit going against what we owe back in the U.S. So again, I'm not going through our tax scenario and situation, but owing that tax does help based upon what you're owing, or what you won't help so much if you're getting a refund, but it really helps if you owe a lot in U.S. taxes. It helps in some cases to offset some of those costs. So that's our situation. In general terms, again, if you don't feel comfortable talking taxes without having an accountant, I've tried to contact a few here in Portugal. I haven't gotten permission from anyone to do a video because I really want them to do a video, but then I also want people to start asking questions because I think sometimes it's a great unknown and not talked about as much. So I recently, one of the subscribers, Fran, actually met him and his wife last year. So as they were moving, they're retired, so they're on a D7. And he just happened to message me recently going, hey, we're getting our tax situation all sorted out between Portugal and the US. And he was explaining that, again, being retired, they have the 10% ceiling or cap here in Portugal. And then explaining, okay, so that's crediting towards what's going on back in the US. But based upon their situation back there, in short, they're still paying much more in taxes, even with that 10% cap that they have here in retirement. And again, the one question that you may ask is the why, and I don't want to go into the tax situation for a particular person because I think that that's irresponsible. But I will say it does bring up some points that when people are moving, tax situation here and back home is huge. And let me go through it. If you're going to buy a property here and pay taxes here on that versus just renting, there's a difference. If you're going to be investing in property and doing short-term rentals, Airbnb, VRBO, or you own a property and you're going to find and rent out other properties, the tax implications here, you're going, God, I can take advantage of this cap here. Well, that income when you're paying your U.S. taxes may really hurt you in the U.S., so it maybe changes your mind on your investment strategy when you're in Portugal. Or, I'll go conversely, back home. Are you keeping a property like a primary residence back there? Are you do you have short-term rentals that you're going to do from real estate? Your investments, you have your Social Security, but if you happen to have stocks, mutual funds, other types of financial instruments based upon things like a 401k, or you withdrawing, was it traditional or did you have a Roth version, IRAs, a traditional or a Roth? That turns a straightforward, let's say, tax conversation into something that looks like this. It looks like a spider web. And there's so many scenarios out there that I truly believe everyone moving here from the US probably has a unique tax situation based upon investments back home and potential investments or work life here in Portugal. So I highly recommend work with your accountant before you ever consider. It's part of the scouting trip, and I'm going to do a future live stream on scouting trips and a pretty comprehensive video on what I think you should be considering before you even come here. But talking to an accountant back home and then working with an accountant here in Portugal to find out what you're getting into, because the NHR status, again, is 10 years, and depending on your situation, so for us, I would be, I think, 58 or 59 when the NHR runs out. So about the time, let's say we're staying in Portugal and we would be retired, we don't have that NHR. So then our taxable liability in Portugal skyrockets, and that affects whether we stay in Portugal or not. Likewise, if you're, let's say you moved here and you're 70, okay, you have until 80, and let's hope that you're going to make it into your 80s or maybe 90s or beyond. You have that 10-year window, and you have to try to figure out, okay, if I'm here for that 10 years, you have a pretty more finite way of looking at what the taxes are here in the U.S. But if you're going to be here longer than the 10 years, when that NHR expires, then you got to think about, okay, is Portugal still an affordable place to live? Just looking at the tax component. My guess is it's no longer as affordable or as attractive financially past the 10-year mark. So it's something that I want to make sure that, again, before you move and after you get here, and you have to be thinking about what happens after the 10-year mark, just because your taxable liability here is going to go up once the NHR status expires. It's a long-winded video. I apologize because I talked in generalities, and in some cases I talked in circles about that, but I'm trying to dance around giving anybody any financial advice or from an accountant's perspective, because you have to figure it out on your own. And we've learned the hard way, the first 2 years of filing taxes, some gotchas or some things that we didn't think about. And it had more to do with what we owed back in the U.S. than what we looked so much at what we were getting as a discount in taxes in Portugal, we kind of forgot, okay, we still owe taxes back in the U.S. What does that look like as far as what we're going to owe back there? So it is something that take the time, make an appointment with an accountant, domestic in U.S., one abroad, one that knows Portugal taxes. Review the tax treaty document so that you have eyes wide open when you're moving to Portugal. As always, thank you for sticking with me and watching this video to the end. Enjoy your travels.